Hello friends, enjoy this relaxing moment with Valentino stories. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments section, and generously hit the like button because it means a lot to us. Please relax and enjoy as we dive in the story. Some nights even the moon begged the clouds to cover its face, because its pale light only made Otica's shadow longer and more frightening. Eziagulu was a quiet village hidden among rolling green hills and tall palm trees. Winding dirt paths linked small round huts with roofs of dry grass. Goats bleated, chickens scratched the red earth, and children chased one another between cooking fires. But every heart in Eziagulu beat a little faster whenever the ground began to shake, for that shaking meant only one thing: Otica was coming. Otica was no ordinary man. He stood taller than the king's tallest iroko tree and broader than the council's finest yam barn. His skin was as dark and smooth as river stones after a storm. Long scars, trophies from old battles, crossed his chest like twisted vines, yet not one hurt him. His voice rumbled like thunder, and his teeth shone like wet ivory. People said a single clap of his giant hands could scatter birds from 10 farmlands away. Every child in Eziagulu learned the same rule even before they could speak: never look Otica in the eye. His gaze could turn courage into dust. It was whispered that one warrior from a neighboring village dared to stare back once, and fell dead before he could even draw his machete. Yet the village owed much to this frightening man. Eziagulu sat in the center of many restless communities. Disputes over land, water, and stolen goats often grew into wars. When drums of battle thudded in the night, villagers sent a single message: call Otica. With no sword, no spear, and no shield, only his bare hands, he would walk to the front line. Enemies who saw him often threw down their weapons and fled. Those who stayed soon lost heads, arms, and hope. After each battle, Otica's huge feet returned along the dusty path, leaving deep prints the rain could not wash away. People feared him, but they were also curious. Where did such terrible strength come from? Time and time again, elders went to the oracle's cave, a dark crack inside a cliff where bats slept by day. They burned bush incense, poured palm wine on the floor, and begged the spirits for answers. The oracle's voice rose from the shadows: he is Dyke reborn, the fiercest warrior death ever swallowed. Cutlass cannot cut him, bullets cannot bite him. Hearing this, the elders shivered, for they knew Dyke's legend included rivers of blood. After each victory, Otica carried grim prizes home. He cleaned the skulls of fallen enemies and dipped them in hot oil until they shone. Then he drank cool water from those skulls, as calmly as another man drinks from a clay cup. Villagers did not gather near when he did this. Mothers kept children indoors. The wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Only Mama Nwakego, Otica's mother, dared walk close. She was small, her back slightly bent from years of work, yet her eyes were bright as fresh kola nuts. She loved her son with all her heart and never showed fear. Each morning she spread a raffia mat at his doorway, singing an old lullaby: strong tree, bend for the sparrow, great river, smile for the fish. Otica would bow his huge head so she could touch his cheek. To others he was a storm. To her he was still a child born of pain and hope on a rainy night long ago. But Mama Nwakego could not fill her son's endless stomach. Feeding him was the task of the entire village. Before dawn, every household prepared a dish: roasted plantain, steaming yam porridge, fat snails fried in hot pepper, or fresh bushmeat stew. Fathers balanced heavy calabashes on shoulders, mothers carried baskets on their heads, children pushed wooden trays. They walked in single file to Otica's compound, eyes low, voices silent. At the gate they laid their gifts on the ground and turned away quickly, like worshippers leaving an altar. When the first rooster crowed, Otica stepped outside. He ate and ate, swallowing whole tubers in one bite, gulping pots of soup as though they were small bowls. When finished, he belched like distant thunder, wiped his mouth on his arm, and returned to his mat to sleep. The warm sun climbed high before he stirred again. Nothing, it seemed, could hurt him. Once a wandering thief tried to sneak into Otica's storehouse at night. The thief carried a brand new Dane gun, certain no one could resist its power. He pulled the trigger from behind a tree. The shot hit Otica in the back. The giant did not fall. He turned, plucked the lead pellet from his skin, and flicked it away. Then he snapped the gun like dry wood and tossed the thief over the outer fence. By sunrise that thief had crawled all the way home and never stole again. Warriors from other villages sometimes challenged him, hoping to earn fame. They arrived shouting boasts, shaking spears, and beating drums. Otica simply walked outside, crossed his arms, and waited. Courage melted into fear. The challengers backed away, claiming they had forgotten something important at home. The villagers of Eziagulu watched in quiet relief, glad their protector had not shed blood on their soil that day. Still, beneath all respect and gratitude, dread grew like weeds. No one forgot that this same man who defended them could just as easily destroy them. Mothers warned children to stay close. Elders talked in hushed tones, "What if he ever turns against us?" The king himself, though carried in a chief's rich wrapper and crowned with eagle feathers, spoke to Otica only through a trusted messenger. Many elders tried to find a wife for the giant, thinking marriage might soften his heart. They offered him the fairest maidens from Umuoba, Ntehe, and Amansi. Each girl arrived in bright wrappers, hair plaited with beads, eyes wide with fear. Otica's shadow fell over them like nightfall at noon, and they trembled. One after another, they refused. "I cannot marry a mountain," a brave maiden confessed, voice shaking like dry leaves. After many failures, the elders gave up the search. Even so, Otica felt the loneliness of a hunter in an empty forest. On quiet evenings he walked to the village well, leaning against the giant kapok tree. Couples arrived to fetch water, laughing softly. Otica watched them, his huge hands opening and closing. No one dared greet him, but he stayed until the buckets were full and the lovers strolled away. Then he sighed, lifted one entire water pot to his lips, drained it, and carried the empty pot back to the owner's doorstep, a silent gift no one dared acknowledge. Time moved on, marked by harvest festivals and new yam dances. Otica's legend traveled farther than the trading caravans. Bards in distant lands sang of the man who drinks from skulls, their voices trembling on the last line. Some people doubted the tales, until they met a trader from Eziagulu who laid a hand over his heart and whispered, "May I never see those eyes again." Yet, for all the fear he inspired, peace reigned. Bandits avoided Eziagulu's roads, knowing one roar from the giant could shatter courage. Wild animals kept to the forest edges, sensing the strange power that walked the fields. The market grew rich, for no thief dared snatch a single cowrie under Otica's watchful gaze. Parents thanked the gods that their children could sleep safely beside the warm glow of cooking fires. And so life settled into its strange rhythm, the giant's footsteps, the villagers' offerings, the quiet nights free from raids. Eziagulu's people prayed this balance would last forever, never guessing that fate often bends the tallest tree when the wind changes direction. The season that followed was unlike any the elders remembered. Clouds drifted past without dropping a single tear. Streams shrank to narrow ribbons, and fish flapped helplessly in warm puddles. Fields of yam, once green and proud, turned the dull color of old rope. Women beat empty drums at the sky, begging for rain, but only dust answered. Food stores fell day by day. Children stopped running during play because their legs felt weak. Nights grew quiet, even the crickets seemed hungry. At the king's council, tired farmers spoke with cracked lips, "The barns are almost bare." He sent messengers to consult distant rain priests, yet their charms also failed. Soon nearly every kitchen fire burned low. Families who once ate 3 hearty meals managed a single thin porridge at dusk. Some parents pretended to swallow food, secretly saving their share for the little ones. Faces that once glowed with health now looked hollow, and laughter became rare in village lanes. Everyone wondered about Otica. For years, dozens of steaming platters had arrived at his gate each morning. Now households could barely feed themselves, let alone a giant whose breakfast equaled a full wedding feast. At first, neighbors still sent him small bowls of roasted corn or dried fish heads, hoping the gesture would be enough. But after a while even those small gifts stopped coming. Pots clanged shut at sunset, and doors were barred in shame and fear. Mama Nwakego tried everything a mother could. She gathered wild leaves that goats refused, crushed termite mounds for hidden white grubs, and stewed tough lizard meat. She carried the steaming bowl to her son, singing the same lullaby that once calmed him. Otica smiled gratefully, yet the thin soup slid through him like water. The hunger inside his great body roared louder than any war drum. Days melted into restless nights. Under the weak light of a shrinking moon, Otica lay awake, listening to the wind rattle dry palms. A new scent drifted through the air, warm, rich, and coppery. It was the smell of human blood carried on sweat-damp clothes and opened cooking cuts. His giant stomach twisted, and old memories stirred, battlefields where fallen warriors bled into the soil, skulls heavy in his hands. At first he pushed the thought away, ashamed. But each dawn brought deeper pangs. His ribs, all muscle before, now pressed sharply beneath skin. His sight blurred, his giant legs shook. On the 7th night without a full meal, the hunger finally mastered him. He rose silently and slipped between huts like a gigantic shadow. By the dying sparks of cooking fires, he found a lone goat herder sleeping outside his doorway. The man never woke. Otica's hands, once weapons against enemies, became tools for butchery. When the sun peeped over the hills, only a dark stain remained on the cracked ground. Screams filled the village the next morning. People crowded around the grisly mark, whispering of leopards or angry spirits. The king sent hunters to follow tracks, but dry soil told no story. Everyone hurried indoors at sunset, checking door bolts twice. That night mothers kept children beneath raffia mats, heads covered, praying to unseen gods. Yet hunger does not sleep. 2 nights later, a market woman returning late felt a wind at her back, too strong to be ordinary air. She turned once, saw nothing, then vanished into the darkness with a muffled cry. At dawn her basket lay crushed like an eggshell. Fear thickened. No one fetched water after dusk, no drumbeat sounded for moonlight dances. Whispers grew, could it be our own giant? Some shook their heads, unwilling to accuse the protector who had saved them many times. Others, remembering skullcups and battlefield tales, began to believe. Still, no one dared speak to Otica or his mother. They locked their doors and hoped morning would come with rain, or at least with all their loved ones still alive. But the clouds stayed empty, and the giant's hunger continued to prowl. A lean moon hung over Eziagulu like a sickle. The evening air felt hollow, holding none of the warm village songs that once floated after sunset. Obina and Nwaifa, 2 young palm wine tappers, tried to laugh away their fear as they headed home. They had stayed late mending their climbing ropes and now hurried along the narrow footpath between cassava plots. "Move faster," Obina muttered, gripping his half-full gourd. His sandals scuffed the dusty ground. Nwaifa forced a grin. "It's only an hour to cockcrow. Besides, Otica guards this place, remember." He did not believe his own words. Tall elephant grass framed the path on both sides. A sudden rustle, louder than a goat's tread, froze the pair. Before they could whisper, the grass exploded outward. A massive shape loomed, blotting out the moonlight. Nwaifa's breath fled his chest. Obina felt a wind, hot and heavy, rush past his ear. A giant arm shot forward. Fingers thick as palm trunks wrapped around Obina's shoulders and head. His gourd dropped, shattering with a sharp pop. Nwaifa's legs understood before his mind did. He flung the climbing ropes aside and sprinted, feet barely touching soil. Behind him came one strangled cry, then silence. He did not turn back. The fleeing man reached the market square in record time. He burst into a compound where a night watchman tended a weak fire. "Help! Something huge at Eziagulu path," he gasped, collapsing. The watchman called neighbors. Soon a small crowd gathered with lanterns, but no one dared return to the dark fields. Morning light revealed what the villagers feared. Near the broken gourd lay pieces of Obina, bones stripped clean, skin torn. Flies gathered in buzzing hymns. Women wailed. Men tightened belts and stared at the ground. Someone muttered, "It is the beast that walks on 2 legs." No one answered aloud, yet many eyes drifted toward the distant compound where the giant slept. Nwaifa, shaking like a banana leaf, was led to the palace. Inside the mud-walled chamber, the king sat on a short stool, elders at his side. A smoky lamp hung overhead, casting trembling shadows. The survivor knelt, trembling. "Speak what you saw," an elder urged. "Great ones," Nwaifa began, voice cracking. The grass opened, and a hand the size of a mortar grabbed Obina. "I saw the scars across that arm. They are the same marks carried by our defender." He could not say the name. A hush fell. Elder Onwake cleared his throat. "We feared this." Murmurs swelled. So our guess was right." The king raised a palm for silence, then sighed. "He has protected us, but we cannot close our eyes while our sons vanish." No messenger dared challenge the giant face to face. Instead, they sent word to the only person he obeyed, Mama Nwakego. 2 young maidens, chosen for their gentle voices, carried the message to her humble hut. She listened, hands clasped tight, the lines on her forehead deepening. Though heartbroken, she agreed to meet the council at once. That afternoon the palace yard filled. The giant's mother arrived in a plain blue wrapper, her feet bare. She knelt. The king spoke softly, careful to hide trembling in his tone. "Mother of the mighty one, hear us. 3 of our people have fallen in the night. We believe your son is lost in hunger. Tell him to stop, or the village must act." Mama Nwakego's eyes filled with tears. She bowed lower. "My lords, his stomach burns like a forge, but I will speak to him. Allow me this chance." The oldest elder nodded. A wooden gong sounded once, ending the council. Evening found her at Otica's doorway. The yard, once crowded with food offerings, lay barren. Only cracked calabash shards glittered. The giant sat on a low block of stone, sharpening a long bone into a point. He looked thinner, the skin beneath his jaw sagged slightly, yet his eyes burned brighter than fire from dry wood. "My son," she began, voice trembling yet firm, "our people are frightened. They whisper your name at wells and bolt their doors at dusk. This path you walk leads only to sorrow." Otica lowered the bone. "Mother, they left me to starve. I begged no one, yet they turned away." His grip tightened until the bone creaked. She stepped closer, tiny palm resting against his wrist. "You were born to defend, not devour. If you must feed, hunt bush animals. The forest still hides deer and porcupine. But leave the villagers in peace. Promise me." For a long moment silence hung between them. Crickets sang. Smoke from distant hearths drifted on the wind. Finally Otica exhaled, a rumble shaking the raffia walls. "For you, I will leave them unharmed." He threw the bone to the ground, where it snapped. "I shall seek prey outside our borders." Mama Nwakego closed her eyes in relief. "Thank you, my child. The elders will know your heart is still noble." She turned back toward the village path. Behind her, Otica raised his gaze to the darkening sky. His stomach twisted, but his promise anchored him, for now. As the first stars blinked awake, a crow cawed from the forest edge, as if warning that mercy has a price when hunger rules the night. The promise Otica gave his mother lasted exactly 3 nights. On the 4th, hunger chewed through his ribs like termites through soft wood. He rose from his mat long after midnight, slipped past the sleeping chickens, and crossed the outer farms without leaving a footprint in the dusty soil. His giant body moved with surprising silence, only the slow thump of his heart echoed in his ears, counting down to the next killing. His feet carried him north toward Umuri, a trading village perched beside a narrow river. Fishermen there often cast nets until dawn, singing to keep themselves awake. That night their song froze in their throats when a black shape blocked the moon. Before anyone sounded an alarm, 2 men vanished beneath enormous hands. The water churned, blood spread like palm oil on clear soup. Otica dragged the bodies into the forest, ignoring struggling limbs and whispered prayers. By sunrise, dripping bones lay piled near a kola-nut tree. When women came with baskets of smoked fish to sell at the morning market, they found the fishermen's nets torn and empty, the sand stained dark. A widow's scream rolled down every street. Panic spread faster than harmattan fire on dry grass. Umuri's chiefs met at once. Young warriors beat drums and sharpened machetes, vowing to erase the monster. "We cannot let this stand," cried their leader, Agugwa, slamming his spear but on clay. "Tonight we march on Eziagulu." Messengers sprinted to neighboring lands, Anam, Nando, Omo, to share the grief. Every place had its own rumor: a hunter missing near the swamp, a night guard found torn apart behind a yam barn, a bride carried off during her own dance. In marketplaces, whispers turned into angry chants: "Eziagulu protects the beast." Some hot-blooded youths stoned the wagons of Eziagulu traders. Cowrie shells, red pepper, and broken pottery scattered on dusty roads. A boy from Eziagulu, traveling with his uncle to sell woven mats, barely escaped with his life after villagers in Omo chased him with firebrands. Back home, the king of Eziagulu felt pressure closing around his throne like tightening ropes. Couriers from 4 directions arrived daily, each carrying the same bitter message: control your giant or face war. The council hall filled with heated voices. Farmers feared their fields would soon turn into battlegrounds. Mothers hid their sons' spears, praying the quarrel might cool. Yet Otica remained unreachable. When the king sent envoys to speak with him, they returned pale and trembling. "He listens to no one except his mother," they confessed. Even Mama Nwakego's pleas now washed over him like beads of rain on a stone roof. For years Otica had enjoyed goat stew, roasted plantain, and baskets of pounded yam. Those tastes felt bland now. Only warm flesh calmed the fire in his belly, only the copper smell of blood satisfied the iron cravings in his nose. Twice he tried to swallow cooked meat again, hoping to quiet the voices in his head. The meat tasted like ashes. He spat it out and stormed into the forest, returning at dawn with fresh crimson on his hands. Word spread of a secret gathering on Nando Hill. Chiefs and war captains from all affected villages met under torchlight. They formed a pact, If Eziagulu failed to deliver the giant's head within 2 weeks, an alliance of 6 towns would attack with fire arrows and iron traps. Hollow tree trunks were filled with palm oil and gunpowder, ready to explode beneath Otica's feet. Normal friendship between villages ended quickly. No more intermarriages, no shared festivals, no trading of salt, cola, or smoked fish. Children in distant towns played a new game. They took turns pretending to be Otica while the others chased him with sticks. The name that once carried or now laced playground jeers. Inside Eziagulu, granaries were finally refilling after the drought, yet the village felt poorer than ever. Baskets of ripe plantain waited in stalls, with no buyers from outside. Skilled potters sat idle because no one traveled to purchase their wares. A deep loneliness settled, heavier than the hunger that had started it all. Mama Nwakego would not give up. Late one evening she followed the path of broken branches that marked her son's return. She found him crouched beside a fallen antelope, untouched. He stared at its body with cold disinterest, then tossed it aside like a spoiled fruit. "My child," she whispered, tears blurring her sight, "the world is sharpening spears for you. Step away from this darkness." Otica's shoulders rose and fell. "If they come, they will break like dried sticks." "But the sticks will be carried by brothers of the men you once saved," she pleaded. "You are turning their gratitude into hatred. Come back home, eat what we have." Otica shook his head. "You do not hear the drums inside my bones, mother. They beat for blood alone." He stood, towering above the trembling trees. "Go. I will face whoever dares me." She staggered back, heart cracking like dry clay. At that moment she understood that the boy she raised, the protector, the laughing child who once chased butterflies, had vanished beneath a tide of crimson hunger. Tears slid down her cheeks as she walked into the night, every step heavier than the last. In the days that followed, war horns sounded from distant hills. Black smoke columns rose where anxious fighters burned ritual herbs, calling on war spirits. Traders rushing through Eziagulu carried the news, armies gather on 3 borders. Cattle herders moved their livestock into hidden valleys. Grandmothers buried family charms beneath doorposts for protection. Under a brooding sky, Otica sharpened a new bone spear and waited. Around him, the lonely wind swept across empty fields, carrying the scent of oncoming battle and the distant echo of drums, this time not beating inside one giant's chest, but in a dozen villages united by fear and anger. The village drums of Eziagulu no longer called dancers, they now called council. Each sunrise delivered darker rumors, warriors massing at the borders, traders refusing to enter, children waking from the same nightmare, a giant dripping red water onto the earth. The king's face, once round with laughter, grew thin like a dry yam peel. At last he rose from his stool and told the elders, "We must seek wisdom beyond our walls, or war will finish us before Otica does." At dawn 5 grey-haired men and the king himself set off. They carried a calabash of palm wine, 2 white cockerels, and a goat with trembling legs, offerings for the unseen world. The path led through tall raffia palms, then dipped into a valley where mist swirled like cooking smoke. Birds fell silent as if the forest sensed their mission. After hours of climbing they reached a boulder split by lightning long ago. Inside that crack lay the shrine of Odum, keeper of secrets. The air smelled of old earth and burning herbs. A slim priestess, her face streaked with white chalk, stepped forward. She greeted them with a voice that sounded both near and far. "We come for help," the king said, kneeling. "Our defender has become our doom. Tell us how to end his power before our neighbors end us." The priestess shook cowries inside a tortoise shell and spread them on a black cloth. Her eyes rolled back, an eerie hush fell. Then she whispered, "Return in 4 days. My spirit guides must walk beyond the river of time to find an answer. The one you seek is not like other men." The elders exchanged uneasy looks. 4 days felt like 4 seasons, yet they bowed and left the offerings. Outside, the king traced the trek on his mental map. They would be home just as the sun slept, then make the same journey again before the next Eek market. Back in Eziagulu, tension stretched thin as spider silk. Soldiers oiled spears even as they prayed peace would hold. Women ground dry millet, their songs slow and shaky. Nobody mentioned Otica's name in the open. They called him the Shadow or simply pointed north. At evening fires, the elders told youngsters to stay indoors after the first rooster crowed, not the third, extra caution for extra danger. Traders arriving from afar reported seeing strange columns of smoke near Nando Hill where enemy camps practiced war rituals. Each story tightened the knot in the king's stomach. 4 dawns later, the same party climbed the ridge again. Their legs felt heavier, but their hope pushed them forward. In the split boulder, lamps flickered over red earth drawings. The priestess awaited them, eyes dark and solemn. She motioned for silence, then spoke in a flat, measured tone. Two forces can break the spirit that lives in the giant, fire and woman. Yet the drum of womanhood does not beat in his chest, he feels nothing for softness. Therefore, flame is your only sword. You must trick him into wearing fire as a garment. Build a small house upon his head, light it, and keep him bound until heat conquers flesh and bone. When flame eats the last breath from his throat, the land will breathe again. No one spoke. Their minds wrestled with the picture of a hut balanced on a skull taller than a palm tree. Finally Elder Onwake cleared his throat. Great Mother of Spirits, how does one place a house on such a head? He can crush 10 men with a cough. The priestess dropped a pinch of grey ash into a clay bowl of oil. It sizzled. Clever tongues will lure him. Offer riches he cannot refuse, freedom to hunt without question, land for his beloved mother, perhaps even greater praise than any warrior has known. His pride will blind him long enough for rope and timber to do their work. She waved them away, as though time itself hurried her hand. Shock and strategy. The climb back felt shorter, for fear pushed their feet. Near the village gate the king stopped the elders. We share this plan with no one except those needed, he said. Walls have ears, and the giant's ears are larger than most. That night a secret council met inside the barn where royal yams were stored. They spoke around a single lantern. 1. Law. The king would announce a strange contest in the market square, promising unmeasurable reward to anyone who could bear a house on his head while men built it. 2. Bind. While Otica knelt to begin, chains forged from bell metal and coated in charm salt would loop around his arms and legs. 3. Ignite. Quick-handed youths would splash palm oil on the fresh thatch and thrust torches through side vents. 4. Contain. Warriors would form a double ring, spears crossed, ready to shove him back if he lurched. Elder Onwake voiced the gnawing doubt inside every man. If he breaks free before the fire takes him, not one of us will see dawn. The king's eyes shone with tears he refused to shed. If we do nothing, many dawns will come, but none for our children. They agreed to gather materials in secret. Timber poles were cut at night, metal workers hammered chains under thick cloth to hide the noise. Palm oil jars were stored beneath a pile of old raffia mats, labeled festival grease to mislead curious eyes. While plans grew, thunder rolled beyond distant hills, promising long-awaited rain. In his hut, Otica sharpened a bone spear by firelight, unaware that sharper blades of destiny whetted themselves against him. Somewhere in the hush of midnight, Mama Nwakego felt a chill snake over her skin, as if unseen fingers turned the pages of fate. And the boulder shrine, quiet now, kept it secret, carved in echoes. Fire is the answer. Whether it would save Eziagulu or scorch its hopes to ash would soon be tested under the unforgiving gaze of a burning hut and a giant who once could not be harmed by man or metal. Morning drums called every elder to the palace hall. The men sat on low stools, faces fixed in tight worry. For hours they traded ideas like desperate traders swapping goods at sunset. "We must trick him," one whispered. "No, we must force him," argued another. At last the oldest voice in the room cut through the noise. "Offer him something he cannot refuse, and let pride guide his feet." Heads nodded. A plan, strange, risky, and thin as spider thread, took shape. They agreed to move quickly. Messengers hurried down every lane, beating wooden gongs. "Gather at the market square at midday. The king will speak." People left half-pounded fufu and unfinished weaving, curiosity burning hotter than their cooking fires. Even Otica heard the call. Thinking the king had news of battle, he cleaned dried blood from his arms, slung a goatskin over one shoulder, and strode toward the meeting ground. By noon the square was packed. Traders climbed roofs for a clear view, children peeked from behind mothers' wrappers, and soldiers formed a nervous ring around the raised platform. The sun blazed overhead, yet a chill ran through the crowd when Otica's tall shadow stretched across the dusty earth. He folded his arms and waited, lips curled in a half-smile that showed too many teeth. The king stepped forward in full regalia, eagle-feathered cap, beaded staff, crimson robe. Clearing his throat, he raised both hands. "People of Eziagulu," he began, "our village needs a hero for a special test of strength. Whoever allows a house to be built upon his very head will earn any reward he names: land, cattle, gold, even a title in the council." An uneasy hush followed. Warriors who once boasted of lion hunts stared at their feet. Potters, tailors, farmers, none dared imagine such a weight on their skulls. Minutes crawled by, the silence louder than the earlier bustle. Dust swirled lazily, and a single crow cawed in the distance. Suddenly thunder cracked, not from the sky, but from Otica's chest. His laughter rolled over the crowd. "Ha! No man here can carry a hut," he boomed. "I alone will bear it. But listen, King, my price is high." He jabbed a finger the size of a plantain toward the platform. "First, I may hunt any human I choose without scolding. Second, you will build a fine hut for my mother and give her broad farmland beside the river." Groans escaped the gathering. A few women covered their mouths. An elder muttered, "Madness," yet kept his voice low. The king's eyes flickered to his advisers. This was the moment they had hoped for, yet fear still clenched their hearts. Pretending to ponder, he struck the ground twice with his staff, then spoke. "So be it. Your wishes shall be granted if you succeed." He turned to the restless villagers. "Trust your ruler. This deed will bring honor to Eziagulu." His words floated across the square like dry leaves, light, but unable to hide the tremor underneath. Otica nodded once, satisfied. He unfolded his long arms and planted his feet as if roots burrowed into the earth. Around him, murmurs rippled, some of anger, some of dread, none of hope. The trap was set, yet every soul present understood that if their gamble failed, no wall, no spear, and no prayer would protect them from the giant they had tempted with his own pride. The new moon rose without a sound. While most of Eziagulu slept, a handful of trusted men gathered near the royal storehouse. They whispered over a small lamp, spreading a rough drawing on the ground. One pointed at a circle sketched in ash. "Here is the clearing beside the fast stream," he said. "No huts, no people, only tall grass. If the worst happens, the water will swallow the fire." The king nodded. "At dawn we start." Before first light, carpenters slid planks out of hidden sheds. Blacksmiths, working all night, cooled thick iron rings in a bath of salt and herbs. Young hunters hauled jars of palm oil, marking them medicine so no curious child would pry. By sunrise, everything lay piled under woven mats on an ox cart. No drumbeat announced the load, only the squeak of wheels and the puff of tired oxen told the tale. Otica, meanwhile, boasted about the coming test. He met his mother outside her small hut, flexing arms as thick as tree trunks. "Tomorrow I prove I am greater than any spirit," he declared. Maman Wakego's eyes filled with trouble. "Pride is a cooking pot with no lid," she whispered. "It will spill and burn the cook." But the giant only laughed. "Fear not, mother. They cannot harm me." He lifted a full mortar of yam with one hand, threw it high, and caught it again, as if tossing a pebble. She said no more, but her heart beat like a scared bird. At noon the king's herald arrived. "Strong one, the people wait," he announced. Otica followed, expecting songs of praise. Instead, he saw only silent faces lining the narrow path. No gong sounded. Even the chickens kept still. They reached the far side of the village where grass grew as high as a man's chest. In the middle stood 8 thick poles already set upright. Workers bowed. "Great warrior, please kneel so we may measure you," one said. Otica smirked and lowered himself, thinking they feared his height. While he bent, 2 men slipped the iron rings over his wrists and ankles. "For balance," they explained. He paid little heed. Timber flew into place. Palm frond walls rose fast, guided by experienced hands. Every gap was stuffed with clay. There was no doorway, only a small hole through which they passed tools and, finally, the last jar of oil. Otica felt heat under the low roof but assumed it was the midday sun. "Stand tall now," a carpenter shouted. As he rose, the ceiling brushed his scalp, forcing him to stoop. Outside, warriors pressed long spears against the walls, wedging them into the earth like fence posts. Others backed away in a wide circle, torches ready. The king lifted his staff. Flames met the oil-soaked raffia with a loud whoosh. Fire raced up the corners and crawled across the roof like angry ants. Smoke pushed through cracks and curled into the open sky. Inside, Otica coughed, finally sensing betrayal. He roared and heaved, but the chains held. He punched a wall. Fresh poles replaced the broken slats in seconds. Heat licked his skin, something even bullets had never done. Sparks bit his hair, blisters bubbled on his arms. "Release me, cowards," he thundered, but no answer came. The roof sagged, showering him with burning debris. With one furious pull, he tore a pole free, smashing a gap large enough for his massive shoulders. Flames clung to him like bright cloth. He burst out, a living torch, screaming in pain and rage. A loud hiss filled the valley. Steam covered the river like morning fog. For a heartbeat, the onlookers saw a glowing shape twist beneath the surface, then nothing, only swirling grey water carrying bits of charred wood. No cheer went up. The king lowered his staff, eyes shiny with tired tears. Elders bowed their heads. The spearmen dropped their weapons and knelt. The clearing smelled of wet ash and fear. Without a word they filed back to the village, hearts heavy but breaths easier than before. Behind them, the stream rushed on, carrying secrets to places no man could reach. And under the fading sun, the burnt framework of the hut still crackled, a warning that even the strongest flesh can fall to fire when the will of a people unites against it. Mama Nwakego was grinding dry pepper when a hot sting shot across her chest. The mortar slipped from her hands and rolled away. She pressed a palm to her cotton blouse and whispered, "Otica, where are you?" A strange heaviness filled the room, as though all the air had turned to stone. She staggered to the doorway, staring down the long path that vanished into distant bush. No messenger appeared, no rooster crowed, only the wind answered, rustling palm fronds like worried voices. That evening the king's heralds arrived with solemn faces. They asked to speak inside. Villagers gathered quietly outside the mud walls, knowing bad news had come. The king removed his feathered cap and knelt before the old woman. A single tear ran down his cheek as he told her how the flames had taken her son and how the river had swallowed the rest. He tried to explain their fear, their choice, their prayers for mercy, but each word felt smaller than the pain in her eyes. Mama Nwakego did not cry or shout. She simply folded her wrapper tighter over her thin shoulders and thanked the king for telling her. When the courtiers left, she sat on a low stool, staring at the fireflies dancing above her yard. Through the night she hummed a lullaby she once sang to a giant child who had balanced on her knees like any other boy. By dawn her humming stopped. A neighbor found her still on the stool, head resting against the clay wall, eyes closed as if she were listening for footsteps that would never come. A gentle smile, half love, half sorrow, touched her lips. The bell rang twice to announce a passing. People hurried from their compounds carrying small palm oil lamps. Men removed their hats, women tied white cloth around their heads. The chief priest declared that the woman who birthed unstoppable strength deserved a farewell worthy of royalty. 2 large mats were sewn end to end to carry her slender body, and fragrant leaves were laid beneath. Children scattered colorful petals along the path. She was buried beside the lone iroko tree on the western hill, facing the sunrise. Elders planted 3 white lilies at the foot of the grave, symbols of peace, courage, and eternal rest. A clay pot of cool water was set near the mound so her spirit might drink on its journey. Drums did not beat loudly, instead, wooden flutes played a quiet tune that rose and fell like distant rain. News of the double tragedy spread beyond Eziagulu. Some neighboring villages had cheered when they first heard of Otica's end, but the story of the mother's quiet death softened many hearts. Delegations from Umuri, Anam, Nando, Omo, and smaller hamlets arrived with baskets of kola nuts, yams, and bitter cola as signs of respect. They stood in a long line to greet the king, each chief offering condolences and pledging, at least for one season, to keep peace. After the mourning period, Eziagulu faced a new question: how to remember a son who had been both shield and sword, protector and terror. At the council square, voices clashed. Some wanted to forget him entirely, others argued that courage, even dark courage, should not be erased. In the end, the king raised his staff and said, "A village without memory is like a drum without skin. It cannot speak." The matter was settled. Smiths and carvers were called. They melted broken spearheads, iron hose worn thin, and even a few bullets left from past skirmishes. Day after day, black smoke spiraled over the forge as molten metal took shape inside a clay mold. Women fetched water from the stream to cool the glowing form. Children peeked through reed fences, eyes wide with wonder. At last, under a clear sky, the statue was raised in the center of the market. It showed Otica standing tall, one palm lifted toward the horizon, the other resting over his heart. The sculptor chose an expression neither fierce nor gentle, a face caught between pride and regret. Beneath the iron feet, artisans etched a simple line: "Strength without mercy destroys itself." On unveiling day, villagers dressed in bright wrappers and danced in slow circles around the monument. The king poured palm wine on the ground and prayed that future generations would find balance between courage and compassion. Young warriors touched the statue for luck, feeling the cool metal tremble slightly under the hot sun. Traders returning after months of absence paused to read the inscription before opening their stalls. As seasons passed, vines climbed the iron ankles, and market children tied flower garlands around the outstretched hand. Travelers use the statue as a landmark. Turn left when you see the giant who guards but no longer harms. During festivals, elders told stories beneath its shadow, tales of drought and hunger, of choices made in fear, of a mother's soft voice stronger than any chain. And on quiet evenings, when the wind swept across the fields, some said they heard the faint echo of deep laughter mingling with a mother's gentle song. It reminded them that love and danger can grow from the same seed, and that a village, united, can overcome even the tallest shadow. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and don't forget to share and like.